Welcome in, y'all. We are finally at conference championship weekend. Super exciting. Been a very fun playoffs, a very fun season so far, and we still got some fun to go. Three more NFL games left this season. And for this one, I'm doing one game at a time for a video, so I'll do Rams Seahawks tomorrow. So stay tuned for that pick. For this pick, because it's only one game at a time, I'm gonna do some breakdown on stats, analytics, all this stuff like that, really comparing the two teams, really digging into it. But if you are just kind of wanting that, minute and a half prelude I tend to do before picks and my final score prediction, fast forward towards the end of the video to what you see on screen now. It's going to look just like this currently looks right before I make that final pick with the team names down at the bottom. So make sure you go to see that. You can get my final one. But if you're down to hear everything I got to say leading up to that, I got a decent amount to get through here, and I'm super excited to talk about it. So we're going to start off here. We're going to look at some basic stats first, right? Just your basic points per game, yards per game, passing and rushing yards per game. So we'll start New England, right? And very, very efficient and very talented offense this year. They really turned it around thanks to Drake, May, got up to second in points per game, third in yards per game. And a big thing there, pass yards per game, rush yards per game at fourth and sixth respectively. But I think that's important to look at there is it's a very balanced offense. You're not seeing one of those at like second and then one at 15th. They're not really leaning too heavily on one. They can mix it up. They can do what they need to do. They can rely on both or the other one if the other's not working. I think that's a big deal for an offense to be very balanced like this, and not just balanced, but balanced and good at both. Very good stuff for that Patriots offense. Denver offense, this is a defensive team. So it's expected to be a bit lower, and how much stock do you put into some of these for them with Stidham in there instead of Nix? I'll leave that up to you. I certainly have my opinions on it. I think that Stidham isn't as insane of a downgrade from Nix as you might think. I think if there's any team that could lose their starting quarterback of these final four and still have a shot, I think it is Denver. But anyways, you look here, Denver, kind of a step back compared to New England, but like I said, that's expected. The rush and pass yards are fairly close to each other as far as rank, which I said was important with New England, kind of trying to stay balanced, a bit more pass heavy. But this offense is good enough with how good the defense is. I think that's the best way to put it, and that's what they've been all year. They've been lackluster at times, which is why I think you can't put too much stock into the Bo Nix thing. Not saying not to put stock in it, because that's huge. You're losing your star quarterback, and you're putting in this guy who's never played a playoff game, hasn't played a game in a couple years. It's a big deal. But it's not like this has been a high flying passing offense all year. We're gonna move on to defensive stats quick here, and we'll start with Denver, and I think you see what you expect, right? This is a defensive team, second in points per game, yards per game, rush yards per game, seventh in pass yards per game. This is a very, very good defense, and the one that they're not second in is pass yards per game, but that can be made up for with the amount of sacks they get. They get after the quarterback like nobody's business. They set a franchise record. Maybe it was an NFL record. If not, it was very, very close. Very, very incredible stuff from this Denver defense this year, and it's a big reason they believe they still have a chance in this game. The Patriots defense, though, look at those stats, might be better than you would think they'd be, right? The Patriots haven't been necessarily known for their defense this year. Now they've had a slightly easier schedule. I get that, but we're at the conference championship. I'm kind of done talking about stuff like that. This has been a very good defense. I think they've played very well. They're balanced. They created a ton of pressure on CJ Stroud last week, and they actually get a pretty high pressure rate. They're not getting a crazy amount of sacks, but they are generating good amounts of pressure, which is going to be important against Stidham here. You're going to need to make Stidham go to his second read, though. That's a big thing as well. Let's jump on over to some other important stats before we get to the straight analytics stats. This is just your basic red zone and third down percentage stats. And a big thing that stands out to me here first is that New England, not a great red zone team on either side of the ball. Offense, they're about as average gets, right? 17th in the league. Defensively, 30th in the red zone, allowing touchdowns 67.5% of the time. That is just too much Obviously need to be better in that, and that could hurt you come playoff time. And it could be big for Denver, right? When you have a backup quarterback, when you get to that red zone, you need to come away with more than field goal, field goal, field goal, right? They need to put the ball into the end zone. And New England, though, on third down conversions are pretty solid. Sixth offensively, 11th defensively. So generally, they're able to stay on the field offensively and get off the field on third down, which again, huge, right? Look at Denver, just because I was just talking about it. We'll look at offensive and defensive third down. It's funny to me that the ranks match up. The Denver offense going against the New England defense on third down, they're both 11th in the league. Patriots offense going against the Broncos defense on third down, they're both 6th in the league. So interesting kind of evenly matched there. Red zone wise, Denver's actually very good. Definitely a step above New England. Offensively, it's surprising that Denver is higher on the red zone, but defensively, no surprise. Denver is first. This defense has been great, and that's going to be a big deal. That's going to be something to look for Sunday. If Denver wants a chance, I think it could come down to these red zone chances, because New England, whether it's through turnover, whether it's moving the ball, they're going to get their red zone chances, and Denver's going to have to keep them out of the end zone. I think Denver needs to force a ton of field goals in this one to have a chance. If they're giving up touchdowns in the red zone a couple times, Stidham's not going to win a shootout, right? You need to keep this thing low scoring, and it starts with that. But now, the last thing I'll look at before kind of going into my final prediction for this game is some different analytics here. So you have 3 different ones, technically 4, I guess. DVOA, offensive and defensive EPA, and then the FPI. All very different. Some I put more stock in than others. But we'll start with DVOA on New England side, 9th. And that takes into account stuff like maybe strength of schedule, for example. It kind of what the average team is expected to do in every situation versus certain opponents, this stuff like that. And how they rank percentage-wise against the other teams in the league. New England is 9th there. And then we look at EPA, which is expected points added, analytic that's used a lot that I see. Offensively, Patriots are first. So very efficient offense. And defensively, they're 11th. So again, still a very good defense there. And FPI, it's an ESPN thing. I don't necessarily love this one, but I think it's worth putting on there because sometimes they have some different rankings compared to a bunch of others. So I always think it's interesting. They have New England sitting at 9th. But let's just compare this to Denver a second. Denver DVOA 7th. So they're saying kind of as a team as a whole in all situations, Denver's a couple steps higher. And offensively, Denver up at 10th, which seems higher than a lot of their stats were, right? And defensively, though, maybe a little lower than a lot of their stats were, down at 8th. So definitely interesting there. And when you compare these two, when looking at the analytics, it's very close. The FPI NA for Denver here, because it was trying to factor in with the Bo Nix injury, and it had them down at like 20th, and I just don't think that's valid there. I don't know. I don't love that, so I didn't feel like it was worth putting on. But these two teams are fairly evenly matched, and it's a shame Bo Nix isn't going to be in, because I think, not that we won't have a good game, I still think it's going to be a good game. I'll get to that in a sec, but it could have been very, very dead set even match in this one. I think the expected line was going to be like 1.5 in this one when Bo Nix was in, so now it's up to 5.5. So now let's get into our prediction for the game. So we have New England 5.5. I've been saying it. I think that it isn't as big of a deal as you would think for Denver to be losing Bo Nix, but I still think it's a big deal. I think Sean Payton knows what he's doing, though. I think he has some stuff up his sleeve. I think Denver is going to be able to start the game very efficiently. And I know it's the AFC Championship game, so it's not like there's needed motivation. But sometimes when a guy like a quarterback gets hurt, it kind of puts extra focus on the team play of it. Everyone doing their job, doing the small things, working out. You need better O-line play. You need those receivers to get open. You need the ground game going. Like, everyone is very much way more needed when something like that happens. And I think it's going to be a decent start for the Broncos. I think the defense is going to be ready to play. I think they'll have a good scheme going offensively. I think they'll be able to move the ball, some timing routes. And I think they'll be in this game. I think it'll be tight, maybe even Denver with the lead. But I do think that the Patriots, like I said, I think they'll prevail. I like the Patriots more overall anyways. I like Vrabel, I like Drake May, and I think Drake May could be the deciding factor in this one. And I think it's something that in the second half, maybe halftime adjustments, they figure out Stidham. They start getting to him, and I think New England starts to very slowly kind of take away the game. And I think when it's all said and done, New England walks away with this one with a win, and they cover the 5.5. I have this one 23-16, fairly low scoring, but I think the Patriots are gonna get the job done. But I don't think, if there's people out there thinking it's just, it's a done deal now, I would say not so fast. There's certainly a world where right from the get-go, Stidham just collapses, if the O-line doesn't hold up, or he just, we don't know how he's going to play. He could throw picks right off the bat, and New England just runs away with it. I don't think that's how it's going to go, but I do think, like I said, Patriots win, they cover, and they're on their way to Super Bowl 60, which this was my prediction coming into the playoffs. Coming into the playoffs, I had the Patriots representing the AFC, and I still do. I'm sticking with it. And you know what? I'll go a step further, and I will say, I tend to work on my pick as the week progresses leading up to the video. But I was leaning New England even when Knicks was still healthy. If New England, once the Broncos won on Saturday, I was like, all right, if the Patriots win, I think I would take them in this one. So I like the Patriots in this one. I think it's going to be a great game, though. If you're thinking of not watching it because you're worried about a blowout or something like that, I would very much encourage you to watch this one. I think it's going to be fun, and we have very limited football left, so you better enjoy it while we have it. So we have our AFC representative, and tomorrow I would do this same video on the NFC, talking Rams, talking Seahawks, that 12th man up in Seattle. It's going to be a fun one.